Our newest character Evelyn is not just Astra's bodyguard, but also her girlfriend. I mean, look at them, they're so cute. Shall we get into the guide? Yeah, let's do that. I'm pretty late to this Evelyn guide, and I'm sure some of you have seen one already, but let's quickly go over the basics anyway, just so we're on the same page. You always want to start the fight by entering Binding Seal. You can do this in a few ways, either through Quick Assist, tapping Special Attack twice, or if you have enough energy, holding down the special button and using your EX special. Make sure to basic attack immediately after a special to ensure you don't trigger the explosion that takes you out of Binding Seal. You want to basic attack 3 times anyway before tapping special again to repeat the combo. This combo allows you to skip your weaker first and second basic attacks and begin from your third basic instead, allowing you to access your higher damaging fourth and fifth hits faster. However, in actual combat, you may find yourself needing to press the special button early, allowing you to dodge and iframe enemy attacks. If you trigger a perfect dodge here, you'll also gain 25% of Evelyn's gauge. Speaking of, her gauge is split into 2 parts, the Embers meter and tether points. When your meter is above 50% full, it will glow red like this. You can then hold down basic attack to expel that meter and give yourself a tether point. With 3 tether points, your whole basic is converted to a chain attack. This is where the majority of Evelyn's damage comes from. Her enhanced basic attacks as well as her chain attack are all iframes. Here's a bit of iframe tech you can do when you're in danger but you want to keep doing damage. If you chain your iframes together like this, you can survive most long attacks. There are small windows between each attack where you can take some chip damage, including in the simpler combo where you just hold down basic attack for 2 enhanced basics followed by a chain attack. This simpler one is better for your damage output overall, but doesn't last quite as long. In general, I recommend trying to keep your Embers meter above 50%, so that way you can tap special into enhanced basic if you ever need a longer iframe. If that's too much to think about, you don't have to worry about that too much, but it's just something I found useful for keeping Evelyn on field without taking any hits. If you find it easy to think about repeatable combos, you can use special, basic times 3, enhanced basic 1, and then 2 if you have her, and then repeat. This isn't realistically how you should play Evelyn, but it works as a basic framework that can help you think about the 2 phases of her on-field time. Again, a great Evelyn player will know how to manage their enhanced basics, allowing them to continue dealing damage with little to no interruptions. A lot of this just takes practice, so don't worry if you can't get it straight away. Let's touch on her chain attack briefly. For her telepoint or chain attacks, you can switch characters immediately after activating this skill. This is incredibly useful for getting Lighter on field and burning his morale gauge before switching back to Evelyn. You'll also be using this tech for her stun windows, but the timing is a little tighter. One more thing to note, you'll generally have enough time for 1 chain attack before stunning while in jacket mode. Once Evelyn takes her jacket off, you'll be able to get 2 off while still having enough resources for the stun window. As you get more used to Evelyn and how you want to play as well as her timings, this will come a lot more naturally. Chain attack min-maxing during stun windows is definitely something you can try to do. I won't go over non-Astra Lighter teams, but the principles should be similar. If you don't want to use manual chain attacks, that's okay too, but for the best results you'll want them on. For the simplest burst rotation, you can trigger the stun with Lighter. You'll want all 3 tether points and a full Ember meter before entering stun if possible. Start with Evelyn's chain attack, followed by Astra. If you don't have enough decibels to ult on Astra, then you might not get full value here. Ideally you ult and then chain to Evelyn, then use her telepoints for a 3rd chain attack. Now you can use Evelyn's ult and then hold down basic attack for back-to-back enhanced basics and then a 4th chain attack. If you care to min-max, there's one more manual chain attack rotation I can show. You'll be using Lighter to trigger chain attacks for Evelyn. You can start with Evelyn and immediately use your telepoints once Daze bar starts flashing rainbow. Before Evelyn snaps her fingers, you want to switch to Lighter here. This will trigger natural chain attack and you can pick Evelyn. After her chain attack, cancel and use your enhanced basic before immediately switching to Lighter. It should trigger another chain attack. Of course, you want to pick Evelyn. Now use her enhanced basic again. This attack is cancelable, so you can ult immediately after proccing the enhanced basic. You should now have 3 tether points to use chain attack again, and then you can switch to Astra and ult. Immediately after ulting, you want to hold basic attack to get Astra out of singing mode. That way when you swap back to Evelyn for another chain attack, you can backswap to Astra for a 6th chain attack. Doing this consistently is going to be challenging for even the best player, so don't be too worried if you can't pull it off every time. I also wanted to note that in Deadly Assault especially, there's going to be situations where Astra's ult is just not up fast enough. I had so many runs trying to record this where Astra's ult just wouldn't be up when I needed it. You'll also find that Lighter's ult builds up significant days, allowing you to activate almost back-to-back stuns. However, this will mean Evelyn's ult will be down for the 2nd stun, so I actually recommend ending the previous rotation before Astra's ult and just continuing to attack with Evelyn. Doing this rotation gives you more damage for both stun windows rather than trying to min-max into one. Performing the previous rotation without Astra's ult, you want to accumulate tether points with Evelyn and use Lighter's ult to build days. Once you have enough days and tether points, hold basic for Evelyn's chain and swap to Lighter before she snaps her fingers. Natural chain attack, then enhance basic. Swap to Lighter to trigger chain attack again and do your second natural chain. Here you would normally hold basic and then ult, but you can see we're a fair bit away from being able to do that. So simply enhance basic and then use your tether points. Now you can swap to Astra and cast her ult. Make sure to take her out of singing mode with a heavy attack and then swap to Evelyn. Swap back to Astra and special before your final swap to Evelyn. You can see me melting a little bit here at the end. Don't worry if your first run isn't perfect. It takes a lot of practice since there's a lot of steps, which is why I included a much simpler rotation for anyone who wants something a bit more casual. Just a couple of things before we move on. If you have C1 and or C2, you might be able to ult early and then get some extra chain attacks so that you can ult every cycle. Based on my testing, I managed to get 4 stuns within 3 minutes this way. When I prioritize ulting and decibel generation, I would miss out on the last sit done window and get a lower score. Also, Astra usually only gets 1 ult per run. With her C1 you'd be able to get 2. Okay, that was a lot of combos. Hopefully you have a good idea of how things should play out when using Evelyn. I highly recommend practicing combos in a mode like Deadly Assault or Notorious Hunt if you're finding the timing difficult. Since you've gotten this far, say hello to Astra. Please, like and sub. Help my channel grow. Thank you. No, but seriously, I want to keep doing more of this kind of stuff and hope you guys play Zenless, and this is the best way for you to show your support, so please. Shall we move on to builds? This is definitely the most controversial point, since almost every content creator has a slightly different opinion when it comes to discs. W engines are pretty simple. Either you use her signature or Mercado Desire if you have it. The Brimstone and Starlight engine are decent alternatives if you don't want to pull for her signature. As for discs, here's the issue. Evelyn doesn't really have a good 4 set that synergizes with her kit. Inferno Metal is the obvious choice if you don't calculate her crit rate. If you do, you'll realize that with Mercado or her signature, you'll very easily cap crit rate. So if you're not using Inferno Metal, we're left with 3 options. Either Woodpecker Electro, Hormone Punk, or triple 2-set. Let's go over the pros and cons of each. Woodpecker is the most common choice, with up to 27% combat attack at its peak, split across 3 individual 6-second stacks. 1 stack comes from basic attacks, 1 from dodge counters, and 1 from EX specials. Evelyn doesn't really want to dodge counter, and this stack would be down during stun windows anyway. Plus her EX special doesn't come up often enough to consistently rely on it. With that in mind, you're really only expecting 1, maybe 2 stacks at any time, severely diminishing the power of this set. Hormone Punk on the other hand sports a 25% combat attack buff, with a 50% uptime, at best. This set is generally good for Chingy teams, but can be annoying to try and time for stun windows with Evelyn. On paper, if you can track the buff's 20-second cooldown, you should see the best performance. However, due to its lack of consistency, I wouldn't recommend it. Triple 2-set is 2 substats worse than 4-set Woodpecker at 1 stack. At 2 stacks, you're looking at something more like 6. Triple 2-set is only 2 substats worse than 4-set Woodpecker at 1 stack. If you're looking at 2 stacks, then it's going to be 6 substats worse. However, triple 2-set is what I would actually recommend most players go for. It should be easier to get good substats, especially if you already have some pieces lying around. Farming for Woodpecker Electro is incredibly inefficient unless you're only using gold discs, which does increase the time it takes to get a good set. So for now, my personal recommendation is going to be triple 2-set, despite the fact that Woodpecker Electro is slightly better, and Hormone Punk will have higher peaks than either option. In the future, there's probably going to be a 4-set that Evelyn really wants, and when that time comes, you should definitely farm it. The rest of her build is pretty standard. Your 2-piece options are Puff Electro, Branch and Blade Song, Woodpecker Electro, or Inferno Metal. Astral Voice or Hormone Punk are also fine if you have good substats. For main stats, you want crit damage or attack percent on disc 4. Disc 5, you can use fire damage if you don't have lighter, pen ratio when you do, and of course you'll want attack percent on disc 6. Prioritize crit rate until you get 80% in combat, although I would personally look for the 75% crit rate cap. After that, you can go for attack percent and crit damage that have roughly equal value, with flat pen and flat attack being roughly half to 1/3 of substat. With Astra, Lighter, and Evelyn's W engine, you get a lot of attack and crit damage in combat, but I would still aim for at least 3k attack and 150 to 160% crit damage. Finally, let's touch on vertical investment. Most creators do this in a vacuum, but I'm realizing that it makes way more sense to talk about the overall team in a game like Zenless, where team synergy is so important. Evelyn's signature W engine is by far and away her best vertical investment. Not only is it an insane stat stack with 24% crit rate and 50% crit damage, but it also sports a 25% fire res shred. For context, the res shred alone is a bigger buff than playing into elemental weakness. If there was ever an argument to pull a W engine over a shiny new DPS of a different element, Evelyn's is the one. I highly recommend pulling it if you plan on playing Evelyn long term. Her cinemas aren't incredibly powerful aside from her C1 and C6. C1 gives you almost immediate access to her ultimate, which gives you a permanent tether point. You also get a small amount of defense shred. C6 doubles your on-field damage. Chain attacks and your ultimate are not affected, but everything else activates an additional attack that does pretty reasonable damage. As for C2 and C4, they provide small damage boosts and quality of life, nothing that I would personally aim for. So while C1 is pretty good, I actually recommend pulling Astra's C1 first. Just like Evelyn, she gets earlier access to her ult, but also provides an 18% res shred buff. Now if you're doing the maths here, that is in fact a 58% res shred that you'd be stacking with this team. On paper, this should be a bigger damage upgrade than Evelyn's C1. However, it's hard to measure how impactful her early ultimate will be without proper testing. Either way, these two cinemas are the first thing I would be investing in after Evelyn's W engine. Lighter's W engine follows, as well as his C1 and C2 for extra res shred, higher stun damage multiplier, and even 2 seconds longer on his stun window extension. If you remember from before, there wasn't quite enough time to consistently fit a 6th chain attack with every stun. However, with Lighter's C1, it should be pretty doable. Anything further is a small upgrade. Evelyn's C2 is a roughly 6 to 7% increase, Astra's C2 is similar, and you should only pull her W engine to make her hair glow. So to summarize the breakpoints, I would say Lighter and Astra plus Evelyn's W engine are highly recommended. Following that, Astra and Evelyn's respective C1s are pretty good, Lighter's W engine and then his early cinemas would be your next stop, and finally Evelyn's C2, Astra's C2, and W engine if you really want it. Of course, Evelyn functions just fine with Mercado Desire, however if you miss the event, I would recommend pulling her W engine even more so than other players. And that's it for Evelyn. If you enjoyed the guide, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions or I missed anything. If you want to chat even further, my Discord's linked down below if you want to join. We're still really new, but I want to turn it into a cool place with lots of chill people to talk about Zenless. Anyway, I'll see you later.